Welcome back to another edition of the B4evaKool podcast. My name is Rex45. This evening, we have Eric Watts in the building. Thanks for coming on, man. How you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Nice, nice. I've been meaning to reach out to you to get you on because you do a lot of racing. And so before we get into all that, man, let's talk about how you got into riding and then racing and stuff like that. I mean, were you one of these fortunate people to start out really young, or like myself, where I started racing probably like 13 years ago now and stuff like that, racing 13 years ago. So
Sure.
what was your experience like when you first jumped on the two wheels?
Well, I started riding dirt bikes when I was a kid, probably 10 years old, and then got into racing. My dad raced motorcycles. My dad raced cars as well.
Cool.
And I started out racing circle track go-karts or quarter midgets.
Mm-hmm.
And then went on to do kart racing, circuit road racing with karts. And then did lots of track days on motorcycles, by the time I got my street license and stuff. And then started racing motorcycles in 2014, roughly.
So were you like 6, 10 when you started getting on the bike, or right?
Oh yeah. 10 years old probably is when I first started riding dirt bikes, and that was just riding trails and no racing or anything on two wheels. I did start racing on, like I said, karts first. So
Okay.
that's where I got my start racing, and my dad's always raced motorcycles and he raced cars. And but I got into racing motorcycles by actually restoring my dad's vintage Ducati.
Okay.
And that's kind of what got me started into racing and getting into racing with the vintage organization first, which I'm still race with.
Oh wow!
And that's the bike I currently ride.
And how long? When was that? What year was that you started on the vintage?
So 2012 or so, I really started restoring my dad's old bike. He bought it new in 1972. It's a 68. Sorry, it's a 72 Ducati 350.
Yep.
And he bought it new as a street bike, and then he raced it in the 80s for a bit. I think he just kind of stuck number plates on it at one point in time, and then it's been in various forms. It got taken all apart,
okay,
and it sat in pieces for years and years. And about 2012, I decided to put it back together, start restoring it. I had a friend, I lived in Florida at the time, in Orlando, who had a vintage motorcycle shop, so to speak, and he kind of helped me get started getting it back together. And it's been kind of a nonstop project ever since. It's even after it gets put together, it's been in various forms for the past 10 years.
Wow.
It seems like it's always changing.
And what made you decide to go with the vintage route? Back in 2012, there were a lot of, I guess BMW just started coming out with traction control and stuff like that a few years before that. So, I saw your bike. You don't even have disc brakes on the bike. So,
not on the Ducati. No, no. Yeah, it's drum brakes. Well, I think it was just a matter of putting my dad's old race bike back together.
Okay.
And that was what I had for a bike to start with.
Right.
This was 2 or 3 years of that before I got into the KTM thing.
Gotcha.
And bought a modern bike.
Right. And putting that bike together and stuff like that, being in the 70s, how difficult was it to get parts? How difficult is it to get parts to keep it running and stuff like that?
Sure.
What's that process like?
Yeah, so I have contact Sid Cycles down in St. Pete, Florida. He's the vintage Ducati specialist, pretty much in the United States, probably North America as well. And known him through my dad from years ago. And pretty much, you need to have him as a contact to be able to race one of these things, because finding parts is not like something you can just go online and buy, So,
Right.
You need specialty stuff. You got to go through him. There's a few people in England who specialize in some Ducati stuff, but it's mostly through him.
Okay. And most of the races that you've done when you started in that, was it always in the same series, or as far as club racing? And is that a large community I just saw a thing
Yeah,
apparently
it's
over
it's
the.
it's ARMA.
Yep.
Yeah, American Historic Road Race Motorcycle Association. That's who I started with and who I currently race with. They're the biggest vintage racing organization in the United States. You got Wera says vintage racing, but it's not nearly as large as ARMA. And
Okay.
ARMA has the more specialized classes when it comes to having a specific class for your vintage bike. They're the organization to run with, and it's a large club. We get big turnouts. The biggest event being the Vintage Barber Vintage Festival in October.
Okay.
That's a huge event. It's probably the second largest next to Mid Ohio,
Oh wow.
which was just last weekend. That's through AMA, but
And now,
yeah, it's a big community.
right. And what makes a bike a vintage? What's the cutoff year to classify as a vintage bike?
Right. So their classes start at 25 years old. So I guess technically something late mid 90s now qualifies as vintage.
Okay.
Just.
Okay.
But of course, they go back all the way to 1940s. They have a 1940s hand shift class with Indians and Harleys.
Oh wow.
My class is supposed to be pre-68, 1968 and older for the 350 Grand Prix class. They're all quantified by year and either 4 strokes and 2 strokes, or they have so many different. They've got a vintage superbike class that's 80s era stuff.
Okay.
They've got a lightweight, middleweight, heavyweight for that. So lots of choices there when it comes to bikes to race.
Yeah. And when it comes to parts on the bike, are you using any modern parts, or is it pretty much like stock?
I do have some aftermarket parts. There's not a lot on the Ducati that's stock anymore, because as a street bike, it was probably pretty not so much a race bike. With the brakes it had on it were pretty useless.
Okay.
Single leading shoe drum and little tiny forks and inadequate suspension. So yeah, it has reproduction era racing forks and 4 leading shoe drum brake on the front.
Okay.
And some nicer suspension in the rear, shocks that are better than what came on it. It was basically just a little Italian street bike, so
Wow. And for that kind of riding, was it difficult? You mentioned that you went to the KTM a little bit later. Were you riding street bikes when you started racing? And is it a
Yep.
different transition, or what's the transition like riding an older bike? I mean, are you using the clutch? Are you shifting a lot? How is it?
Yeah, well, riding the vintage bike's definitely different. It doesn't handle as well. Chassis moving around under you, and yeah, there's no quick shifter. There's none of the modern stuff you have. Of course, I don't use the clutch to upshift. You still do clutchless upshifts.
Right.
Just kind of preload the gearbox, but yeah, there's the switching between the modern to the vintage bike is definitely something to get used to. Sometimes I even jump from one to the other, and you first get on the bike and you wonder, is there something wrong with this? Man, this is really bad. But nope, that's just a 50-year-old motorcycle is not going to handle anywhere nearly as well as something modern does. You
Right.
can't push it like you can a modern bike.
Got you. Okay, wow. So your technique is even different, just over the course. And how long the race is usually? 8 laps, 10 laps.
Yeah, sprint races are anywhere from 8 to 10 laps. Most events, depends on the track. Mid Ohio last weekend was 6 laps. It's a 2-mile track. Like any other race organization, they do 6 to 10 lap sprints.
Okay.
So yeah.
Wow. And what made you go to a newer bike? And let's talk about that. I know it's a KTM, but I'm not quite sure what year and stuff like that.
Right. I have a 15 RC390, which was originally a Moto America Junior Cup bike. I got into the KTM thing with there are modern classes with ARMA. They have a singles class. They call it Sound of Singles.
Okay.
Just single cylinder motorcycles. It's kind of originally aimed at like what would be Moto 3 bikes. They're like Honda NSF 250s or RS 125 two strokes, single cylinder Moto 3 class bikes.
Right.
And then they let the KTMs run in that class. And a lot of people were running the KTMs, and I just kind of got interested in buying one. And I found a deal on a Moto America Junior Cup bike, a former Junior Cup bike. My bike is Jackson Blackman's old Junior Cup bike.
Nice.
He races with Moto America still. Maybe he's in Twins Cup, I think, right now.
Yeah.
But it's his old Junior Cup bike that I bought, and it was kind of looking to have something that's just push button start, because you definitely wrench a lot on the vintage bikes, and sometimes it's nice to go to the track and just push the start button and go.
And go, right? Tire warmers and go.
Yeah, no tire warmers. I mean, yeah. Well, yeah, no tire warmers on the vintage bike, but yeah, just simpler. Now, given that, I have sometimes it feels like I've wrenched more in the KTM. They've got their own set of problems.
Yeah.
But
I have a couple myself. I end up. I started on. Well, I raced an R6, and then I switched to a KTM about 3 years ago. I think maybe 3 years now, maybe going on 4. And I bought a former Moto Cup bike as well, Alex Dumas' old bike and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's different. I mean, I've had to get the motor rebuilt already and stuff, and but I like it enough that I end up I have a 22 as well. So, but they are they are fun to ride. So so what's that's been like? Work riding both. Well, I believe you have a 22 as well, right?
I do. I have a 22 as well. Kind of partly because I've had so many problems with the 15, mainly given the 390s have head gasket problems. I can't count how many head gaskets I've replaced. The 22 has not had that problem.
Right.
All I've done is change oil and general maintenance. It's got it for 2 years now, so it seems to be more reliable than the 15 ever was.
Yeah.
So and they changed something,
And they must have, because I noticed the difference as well. And even the handling, I really enjoy the handling more on my on the 22. I usually run the 2015 now as a B bike, rain bike mostly.
Sure.
That kind of thing. But I feel way more comfortable on the 22.
Yeah, the handling's a little bit different. It doesn't feel. I don't know how to describe it. I know the geometry is different on it. The rake is different, just a tiny little bit.
Right.
But something about it does handle. I don't know if it handles better. It just handles differently. It feels not quite as rigid as the Cup bike feels. It was a full. It's got. I don't know what suspension it has on it. It's whatever they were running in Junior Cup at the time. But the 22, I put an Olin's stock on the rear and stuff, but the front I've left alone. I'm just racing the stock forks, and they seem to work just fine for me. So, but
and any thoughts of going up to a bigger class?
I've thought about it, but it's a little bit of a money thing. Tires get expensive. Get into a bigger bike and you go through tires a lot faster than you do on a small bike.
Right.
I can make a rear tire last, maybe 3 or 4 race weekends, and you get into something like even a 600, you're probably looking at a race weekend on a rear. I'm guessing, tires get expensive.
Yeah.
So that's part of my staying with a small bike is monetary. And I just like riding a small bike. Riding a small bike fast is fun.
Yep.
There's you're not spoiled by horsepower at all.
Right. And now, how do you feel about running with the Ninja 400s and stuff, being on the KTM? They're a little bit quicker in some areas, but and you look at the World Superbike, the small class. There's mostly all 3s and Ninja 400s and a couple of KTMs.
Right.
So what has it been like for you running with those guys?
Yeah, they're hard to keep up with. the Ninjas definitely make, probably 5 to 10 more horsepower depending on the bike. I've had my bike and another Ninja 400 that has about the same amount of stuff done, to it, a tune and an exhaust, and that bike made 7 more horsepower than my 22 390 makes.
Oh,
So it's an inferior bike for that class, for the SOT4 class and Arma.
right.
Now, Wera, they have 2 different classes it fits in.
Okay.
The F class, F super stock classes, R3s and KTMs, and no Ninja 400s. If you go to the E class, it includes 400s. So it is, at least you're racing in a bump up class if you race against them in Wera.
Right.
But yeah, they're hard to stay with sometimes, especially get a good rider on one. They're definitely running away from you.
Right. Right.
And I've ridden both, and I'm faster on Ninja 400.
But you prefer the KTM.
I'm too deep on I'm too deep in on the KTM stuff now to go to Kawasaki.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. I was torn initially. I like the KTM, the look of it. It feels more like a race bike, sitting on it and stuff like that.
Yeah, it handles better.
Yeah,
It definitely handles better.
and once you're on it, like, I mean, same thing. I really enjoy riding them. I haven't raced a Ninja 400 or anything like that, so I don't know what that's like on the track. But I really enjoy the KTM. Now, it sounds like you do a lot of the work yourself on your bike. Was that something you always did, or I mean, just growing up with racing karts and riding dirt bikes?
Pretty much, yeah. Kind of the mechanical thing has always been in my wheelhouse. I think I've gotten better at it since I started racing motorcycles, being forced to work on things.
Right.
Pretty much, I mean, I've torn the KTM motor apart. I had one that cases cracked. The crank came apart and cracked the cases, and I like transplanted everything and bought another set of cases. And well, of course, some parts were trashed, but
right.
I've had them completely apart now, so I feel fairly confident on the KTM. The Ducati, I'm not maybe as confident on, but learning with it as well.
Gotcha.
Some of the more advanced stuff. I mean, I take the engine to who I mentioned before, Sid Cycles in Florida, to do complete rebuilds on things like crank rebuild and stuff like that. Just not anything I do, but general maintenance, valve clearance check, adjust, oil change. That's all stuff I just do myself on both bikes.
Right. Yeah. And I find that you had to. It's something I didn't do as much when I first started riding, but just with time and obviously saving money and stuff like that. And, sometimes even finding, dependable people to work on the bike, that especially when you're new into the, the racing community or the bike community, is you don't really know a lot of people and stuff like that. So now I find I'm definitely doing more wrenching today than I've ever done before. Out of necessity and even just a comfort now, and it helps that YouTube is there, so you can a lot of stuff you can kind of figure out these days. Where in the past it was you were going through a book or two.
Right. Yeah, I think you got to be able to do some maintenance to race motorcycles, even modern. You got to be able to do some level of mechanical ability to. Or else it's just going to get expensive. You're taking your bike to a shop every time it needs, a valve adjustment. I know some people uncomfortable with something like that, but it's really not that hard. And you're going to spend a lot of money taking your bike to a shop every time. That needs done once a season if you're racing full time. So
right. And is that your schedule? You race full time?
Yeah. Pretty much from starting in February to October, I'm at least once a month.
Okay, wow.
Between an Arma event or a Wera event.
Right.
There's probably one race a month at a minimum.
Nice.
And
I noticed that I know that you guys have a KTM Facebook page. You want to talk about that a little bit? I know you contributed a bit. How did that get started? And what is it like, being one of the main contributors to the page and stuff like that?
Sure, right. So I started the KTM, called a race bike only page. There's a KTM owners page on Facebook, and what I found was there's a lot of people on there asking street questions. What lights do I put on my bike, or what phone holder am I?
Right.
Stuff that has nothing to do with racing, and a lot of people on there who don't have any mechanical skill or any, you know, I find the level of that is higher with the race group I started. So
Right.
I started a page. It's called Race Bike 390 Race Bike Only, and I try to filter it that everybody on there is somebody who actively races a KTM or at least does track days on a KTM.
Okay.
And through that page, I've gotten to know several contacts in the U.S. who are the main KTM performance parts suppliers. You got Paxton Gray out in Oregon, is Gray Area KTM. He's probably, I think, the only 390 performance parts guy in the U.S. that I know of. I visited his shop before, out in 22. Back in 22, I raced out Laguna Seca,
Okay.
and then we were going to go race at the Ridge up in Washington. These were back-to-back ARMA events, and I stopped at his shop and visited him. So I've met him in person a couple times. Met him at a couple of Moto America rounds too, just in the paddock a couple times. So we talked in person, but gotten to know him and always refer people to him for parts. The other guy is Formula 390 is Matt in
Okay.
Texas. He's the Taiga performance parts, aftermarket parts for KTM. He's the U.S. distributor. So I've gotten to know him. And then I've just kind of become the go-to guy sometimes, seems like, for the KTM stuff, just by nature of doing it.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't know everything. People think I know everything, but I don't know. I don't know everything. I ask a lot of questions myself. So
yeah, no, I appreciate you starting that page. I mean, that's how I got introduced to you. I was looking for help on the 2015 at the time, and then you connected me
yeah,
with Paxton. So
yep,
definitely appreciate it and appreciate that work, because it is, when you're first getting into racing and getting into bikes and stuff like that, you really don't know a lot. In my case, I didn't grow up riding bikes and stuff like that, more cars and BMX and stuff like that, but not motorcycles.
right,
So so yeah, having a place like the Facebook page to go to get information is really helpful. I mean, because I don't want to say it's like a part-time job or a full-time job, but it's definitely a lot of effort to just to put information there.
sure. Yeah, I've done some, you know, tutorials on how to do stuff that I've posted on there. Just commonly asked questions. How to. I've got a whole post on basic conversion that I made. You buy a street bike. Here's the list of parts to buy. Minimums.
It,
Here's the start to finish.
right. It's not everything on
So
gray area KTM's page.
well, most of the parts are for him. Like I said, I don't know of anybody else who sells the parts. I mean,
Yeah.
most KTM dealerships don't even sell the street bikes, let alone the 390 stuff. So he's the go-to guy that I know of for that kind of stuff. So
Yeah, well, likewise, that's
yeah,
which is, it's interesting because like with like the R6s, the Kawasaki's, even the Ducatis, you definitely can find more resources,
sure,
for those brands. And KTM is a big brand, but you're right,
right.
the race, well, street bikes,
The
non-dirt bikes, and dual purpose bikes and
the
stuff
dirt
like
bike
that.
stuff is big,
Yeah.
but the street bike. I mean, I've even found some KTM dealerships they don't even sell necessarily anything but dirt bikes.
Oh
They
wow.
don't even sell the street line.
Yeah. It's just,
Yeah,
yeah, that's interesting because a lot of folks do ride them. So, you go
right.
you go on the marketplace and other places, you do see 390 Dukes and RCs out
Yeah, yeah.
there. And so now you've been riding for a while and stuff like that. And do you coach folks, and what kind of coaching are you doing? And let's talk about that a little
Yeah.
bit.
So yeah, I've been. This would be my ninth full season. racing motorcycles. Like I said, I started out racing karts when I was a kid. So a lot of that stuff translated over as far as
Yeah, I was going to ask about that.
racing techniques, knowing, yeah, apexes and breaking points and all the racecraft stuff. I feel like I have even more experience before I even started racing on two wheels. But I started with my friend Mark Morrow, who races with Arma as well. He was the teacher for Arma starting in 2020, I believe. And then he started asking me to help with the school, just like as a control rider, on track coach. And then he has broken off into his own school, Mark
Okay.
Morrow Road Racing School Services. And he started doing his own coaching, his own schools. He's teamed up with a track day organization, Precision Track Days. He's running with them a lot, running his school during their track day.
Gotcha.
And I've been helping him with that as being his, quote unquote head coach, on track coach for students. And that school continues to grow. This is his first full year doing it.
Okay.
We've had, let's see, 1, 2, 4 events at least. I think we had, well, if you start last November, yeah, he had an event last November and December at Roebling Road. He had another one at CMP back in March. He just had one at VIR this past Monday, Tuesday.
Okay.
Was right after Mid Ohio. And he has another school scheduled for September at Roebling Road. It's a 2-day school. The first day is a licensing school.
Okay.
Get your road race license. We teach flags, procedures, all the basic stuff. A little bit of racecraft in there, a little bit of technique. More of that's covered on day 2. We'll get into the specifics of that kind of stuff. We'll do some drills, braking drills, cornering drills. We'll talk about it in the classroom and then go out for a session. We'll do the same thing on the track. We'll come back and talk about it. So yeah, that's going good, and I hope to see his school continue to grow and be a full-time thing at some point. Right now, it's still not every month, but he's continuing to grow, and I'm happy to see that going with him. And so
Nice. And now is it more for new riders that are trying to get into riding, or is it also for riders who are trying to, get better? For me, like I did a track day and got my license with
yeah,
LRRS. It was part of CCS back in like 2013.
mm-hmm.
But that was like the only track day I did was to get the license, and after that, I just raced up until like 2019, and I did a track day in 2019, like track day only.
Right,
So
right.
is it for riders that's already been racing as well, and what do you?
It's for both, yeah. For current racers or for someone who wants to get into or who just wants to improve their riding. Make yourself a better rider. You would benefit from the techniques that we teach, the drills and the topics we cover would make you just a day at the track. I mean, even just going to the track alone makes you a better street rider. But taking a course
Right.
like this would benefit somebody who's not even looking to get into racing.
Yeah.
You might find yourself getting into racing after taking it because you have your certificate. You can take it to any race organization, and they'll let you race after you pass the school.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Going on a track definitely makes you a better rider on the street. And I see a lot of videos online of people drag racing on the street and racing on the street and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And it's like sometimes I just cringe at certain things I see because not to say on the track is dangerous as well, obviously, but at least it's a controlled environment. There's EMS, there's only bikes on the track and all this stuff. And generally not generally, you're always in a leather suit, so there is that.
Right.
Right. It's I find it, I'm not trying to pick on those guys and gals that just ride on the street only, but it's almost like, yeah, if they came to the track, just a few weekends out of the year, And
Exactly.
they probably wouldn't even ride the race, go fast on the street because I don't go when I should still ride my street bikes, but I don't go fast on the streets. I have no desire to.
Yeah, and most of those people think they're going fast on the streets.
Yeah, that's true.
And then they get to the track, and they're humbled.
Yeah.
By the speed that you go on the street is not anywhere approaching the speed that you go on the track. And I think a lot of people could benefit from seeing that, just realize what fast really is,
Right.
but you can't do that till you go to the track. It's just, it's another level.
Exactly. And on the street, most of these people are, they're racing for like maybe a minute. And, on the track, you're like 10, 12 minutes, depends. I mean, the fast guys are even quicker. So the consistency of that, is, I remember when I first started racing, I wasn't even fit enough to stay on the bike. I remember like my arms just giving out because I'm breaking into a turn. And I had to, start training and just build up my muscle mass a little bit. So like I can ride the whole weekend and not be taking aspirins or something.
Yeah, it's a whole nother level of something that somebody who's only ridden on the street just doesn't realize till they do it.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
So what is like the rest of the season going to be like for you? It seems like your schedule is pretty busy between you racing full time, having content, managing the page, teaching, and
working
and working,
and going to work every day,
and going to work every day. Wow, what's that like, man?
Yeah, so the rest of the season's is not. Let's see. 2 weeks from now is we're at Pittsburgh. That's an endurance series on Saturday, which I'm racing with Mark Morrow, who runs the school.
Okay.
He and I have been running the Weira endurance series and the ultra lightweight 2-hour race. So we're running his Ninja 400.
Okay.
So that's on Saturday. We'll do that. We'll each probably run an hour stint. That's usually our plan, at least. Is to each run an hour. And then after an hour, we try to do one pit stop, fuel up. The next person takes the next hour. Sometimes it doesn't work out. Depends on, you get tired, or other things happen, red flags, but that's usually the plan for the 2 hour. And then,
what's the mindset like in the endurance races? I've been trying to get a couple of my buddies to try to go and do some. What is that like? I mean, I've talked to guys who have done the CCS, the Azra endurance one, and there's one rider I know. He's the only one on his bike, and he's like, after a while, he doesn't even hit the brakes because he's just fatigued.
Sure. Yeah, you gotta like. You can't run the sprint pace you do for an 8 to 10 lap race. You gotta work on just running consistent laps. You don't want to go slow, but get yourself into a rhythm and kind of control your breathing and not get pumped up like you can in a sprint race.
Right.
You'll wear yourself out. There's no way you'll last an hour trying to run like that. What's amazing to me is that the people, the kids who are winning the lightweight 2 hour are running it by themselves.
Oh, wow.
I'm pretty sure the last 2 winners, the guy ran it by himself and he's faster. He's faster than me. So he is running like a sprint lap pace for 2 hours. It takes a lot.
Right. And when,
but yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, you gotta get yourself into a groove and not push as hard, and that's generally I try to make that my strategy is go out, be consistent, just put down the same lap over and over again. Not necessarily your fastest laps, but just quick, consistent laps, and just keep riding. Don't count laps. Yeah. Try not to look at the clock. You keep go. Is it time yet? Is it time yet? I'm tired.
Yeah, so. I was going to say after. Is there like somebody with a pit board trying to tell you how many laps you've done or how long you've been out there, kind of thing? So that way, because
we generally have somebody. We generally have somebody at the wall who is looking out. Mm-hmm. There's a clock on the dashboard on the Ninja, so we can kind of watch our time. and then come up on 55 minutes. We our signals, we tap our helmet. That means I'm ready to come in, and then we'll get a confirmation. Tap back means okay. We're ready for you pit in. We're gonna be ready with the fuel.
Got you.
Swap riders. That's our signal. So of course, if you tap your helmet early, I'm tired. So, but we try to go an hour each. That's our strategy. You know, so
wow.
Yeah.
And is it just fuel and swapping riders? No tires on the small bike?
The tires. I mean, you could if you want, but we don't have a quick way of swapping wheels out. I mean, that would take too much time. But the tires last 2 hours.
Okay.
They can start to go after 2 hours, but actually the Dunlops, we just ran Dunlop slicks. They lasted the 2 hours. I mean, they're starting to go a little bit, but then Mark proceeded to run a school and a practice session. He said they lasted another almost day.
Oh wow!
I can't believe they lasted that long. And these were some Dunlop slicks. I don't know. I'm not super familiar with the Dunlops, but we've been running Dunlops for the series. Dunlop's the sponsor for the Weira endurance series. So, but yeah, no tire swap, no wheels. So you could if you wanted, but we don't have a quick way of doing that. That would be a waste of time. So, and the tires last long enough to make it 2 hours.
Oh, nice.
So,
well, we're gonna wrap up in a little bit, almost coming up on 40 minutes. Do you want to tell folks how they can find you, and also shout out your sponsors and obviously the riding school that you're teaching at and stuff like that? So just in case you guys are in someone's location in close drive.
Sure. So if anybody's interested in the racing school, it's markmorracing.com, and you can go on there and click on the calendar. He's got his dates that he's available to do coaching. He does one-on-one coaching, as well as the dates on there that he has scheduled for a school. The rest of this year is one in September, and I believe one in November and December as well. And those are all at Roebling Road Raceway down in Savannah, Georgia. And then if you want to find me, you can search on Facebook for the KTM RC390 Race Bike Only page. That's the page I run. And that's pretty much it.
Nice. If you're not there, you're racing, right?
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you for coming on, man. I really appreciate it. My name is Rex 45. This is Eric Watts. You've been listening to the B4evaKool podcast. Thank you.